you have to like the language. その言葉を通じていろんな知識、いろんな新しい経験が得られるわけです。だから非常にいろんな意味で大切ですよ。
Hi everyone, Mayuです。Welcome back to my channel. 今日はなんとあの方がもう一回来てくれました。スティーブ・カフマンさんですね。20カ国語喋れるという方なんですけど、一回インタビューさせていただいてて、そこでは勉強法とか、モチベーションの保ち方とかについて聞いてるので、ぜひこちらの動画をチェックしていただければと思います。で、今日はですね、皆さんにインスタグラムで事前にご質問をいただいたので、それを英語と日本語でそれをね、質問して答えていっていただきたいと思います。では早速どうぞ。 Hi, thanks for coming into my channel. Welcome back.
I'm looking forward. I joined the last time.
Thank you. So, for today's video, I asked my followers on Instagram what they want to ask you, what they want to know about maybe how you learned English. How you learned other languages. Okay, so for some of the question, I will ask you in Japanese, because you can obviously speak Japanese, and then for some, I will ask you in English.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the first question is, what is the most difficult language to learn? Maybe in general and maybe for you.
Well, obviously, the more different the language is from your own native language or a language you know, the more difficult it is. So it may be different in terms of vocabulary. It may be different in terms of writing system, for example.
Yeah, like grammar?
More the actual letters.
I see.
Grammar is a minor issue. If you learn the words and if you can read, you will get used to the structure of the language. So the structure of the language to me is the least important issue. The bigger issue is, for example, for me to learn Japanese, I have to learn hiragana, katakana, and kanji.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
Yes.
Okay, for a Japanese person, typical Japanese person has had more exposure to the Latin alphabet, but most of the time they read in Japanese. So their brain is very used to reading in Japanese. So if now they have to read in the Latin alphabet, or with me now in Persian or Arabic, writing system makes it difficult because it's so hard for the brain to get used to reading in another writing system. If a Japanese person goes to learn Chinese, then they have a big advantage because a lot of the vocabulary in Chinese, first of all, they can read the characters and they're familiar with the vocabulary. So it depends on how different the language is from a language you already know. And so from that point of view, for me, Chinese, Japanese, now Arabic are difficult. Spanish, Portuguese, French are easy.
Yeah, my third language is Spanish. Like I've been trying to learn Spanish, and it's much easier to learn it in English than learn it in Japanese, which is interesting. Yeah, because it's very similar.
Yeah. Lots of half the vocabulary you can identify, you can recognize it.
Yes. I think Chinese would be much easier for me to learn, but the pronunciation is just kind of scary to jump into that language.
Pronunciation is another story because I think in a way Japanese pronunciation is closer to Spanish pronunciation, whereas Chinese pronunciation is in some ways similar to English, but of course the Chinese have tones. Every language has its own difficulties.
Yeah, some of my followers asked you, how did you get so well on pronunciation? Because they've heard you speak Japanese.
Well, don't forget that I lived in Japan for 9 years.
That's true.
But also I did a lot of listening. So you have to, before you can pronounce the language well, you have to hear the sounds. You have to notice the sounds. And at first we don't hear them.
Yeah.
And if we hear enough, if we listen enough, every time we listen, the brain notices something new, something else. And if we really hear the language clearly, then we can learn to pronounce it quite well. At the beginning, and when I say listen a lot, I'm talking about hundreds or thousands of hours.
Oh.
People don't realize how much you need to listen and read. It's not like an hour a week, It's lots. Yeah, and that helps. And then I think another thing is you have to like the language. You have to like not everything in the language, but you have to find something. You have to find a story or a TV series or somebody's voice or some subject matter, something that you like. Because you have to connect emotionally at some level with the language, whatever the language is, Spanish, Japanese, English, it doesn't matter. And if all you're doing is studying for a test because it's a duty, because you have to do it, and there isn't that emotional connection, then it's more difficult to pronounce well, it's more difficult to learn the language. So I think pronunciation partly is the sort of desire to be part of that language community in a way. So there's a psychological or emotional part of it as well. Plus a lot of listening. And not worrying about it, just going for it.
I think it's a lot of Japanese people study English just to pass the exams,
right.
to go into colleges or something. They start off, we have to do this, rather than like, oh, I want to do this. So that's one thing like I noticed. That was different for me because I liked English songs a lot, and then for me English was like, oh, it's so much fun. I want everyone who's struggling with learning English to hear that.
I think it's in a way, it's unfortunate that so much English instruction and English learning in Japan seems to focus on the TOEIC exam. Japanese people take the TOEIC exam far too often. It's not necessary, and especially if you're going to get like 400. Don't take the TOEIC exam if you're going to get 400. Wait until you're going to get 750. Wait until you're... No, seriously, there's no point.
Yeah, it's kind of wasting money.
Wait until you're confident and you like the language and you have vocabulary and you can understand well, and then take it and go for 750. But there's too much focus on exams. Like you said, finding things you enjoy. It could be songs, it could be whatever it is. Find something to enjoy, and if you enjoy it, you'll learn.
Yeah, and then eventually you get high scores on TOEIC.
Absolutely.
Do you take other exams like TOEIC in other languages?
No.
No?
Never.
Oh, never?
The only languages, obviously I had French at school in Canada. Then I studied in France for 3 years. And so I had exams in French, but they didn't examine me on my language. I had to write, I was doing political science, economics in French. When I studied Chinese, I had to take a test. That's the only language exam test I have ever taken. But I don't care. I have no interest in the test. I learned for fun.
Like you are more focused on like practicality, I guess?
Yeah, more enjoyable. I want to enjoy it. I'm interested in learning about the history of Iran and Persian things, and I find a podcast and I listen to people that are interesting or funny or TV programs, and I do it for fun. I understand that if a person in Japan wants to go to a university in Britain or the United States or they need something for work, so it's different. But still you have to enjoy it. You still gotta enjoy it. If you're just doing it to pass the test, get a high mark on TOEIC, I don't think you'll learn the language very well.
Well, in Japan, we are required to take a lot of tests for some reasons. And in order to get into university, or maybe if you want to go study abroad, then you have to take like TOEFL or IELTS. That's fine, like we have to do them anyways, but I think like having the time to watch some shows on Netflix or like listen to music when you're resting or something, I think that would make a big difference.
Oh yeah.
Because studying for the exams many times is not fun at all.
No.
It's hard.
No.
I think in Japan it's difficult to find opportunities, or difficult to like surround yourself with English speaking people.
Of course. The majority of people don't. And the reason is very simple. If you live in Germany and if you drive 100 kilometers, you might have to speak French. Or you might have to speak English to communicate with someone, say, in Italian, because you don't speak Italian. I mean, learning another language is much more meaningful there. If you live in Tokyo, unless you go on an overseas trip, even insofar as going to Hong Kong or Singapore, in Japan, you don't need the language so much. So I think that makes it a little more difficult. It's not, if Kanto spoke Japanese and Kansai spoke Korean, then everybody would learn Korean. It's just you go down there and you speak Korean.
True.
It's not a big deal, right? But so people have to find a reason. They have to find a way to enjoy it. If they're motivated, if they want to learn. If they don't want to learn, that's fine too. There's no obligation. But you have to find something fun. Music, TV shows, movies, friends, travel. I always emphasize the enjoyment. You got to find something that makes it fun.
So do you enjoy traveling a lot?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Very often if I'm going to go somewhere, like this was the case for say Romanian or Greek or Czech, I would work on learning the language before I go there. So that when I go there, I can operate in the language. That makes it so much more fun if you can communicate.
We will probably be fine speaking English to, bigger cities, people speak English, but you choose to study the language that's native to that country. That's so cool. Yeah.
But I think maybe Japanese people overestimate the extent to which people in these other countries speak English. The hotel staff speaks English, but in a lot of countries, English is not very widespread. In Romania, you're better off in Romanian. In Greece, they speak English pretty well, but they sure appreciate it if you can speak to them in Greek.
Yeah.
And Ukraine, I speak in Ukrainian, and if I go to Japan, a lot of people speak English, I'll be okay. Well, no, actually, some people speak English, but a lot of people don't, and they appreciate it if you can speak to them in Japanese.
I think it would be a completely new experience if you can speak that language.
Absolutely, and you can turn on the television, you can understand what they're saying. You can read the signs.
Yeah,
in a country where you
that's
can't
true.
even read the signs, it's a little intimidating. But if you go there and you can read everything, comfortable.
Yeah.
If you get lost, you ask someone. You can ask them; they'll tell you.
Yeah, I know that it takes a lot to learn other languages, but like it sounds amazing, and I want to try maybe someday.
Sure.
Let me change into Japanese.
Okay.
言語学習において大切にしていることと、あと、それに関連して私生活でもなんか大切にしていることはありますか？
私にとってはですね、
はい、
その言語勉強というか、それがね非常に大切、僕の生活において非常に大切な部分なんですよ。働いた時はですね、仕事においては非常に大切だったんですよ。もちろん日本に木材の商売だったわけですよね。だから日本語でその商社だけじゃなくて、もう木材問屋とか、工務店とかね。いろんなレベルの人と取引できたわけですよ。その日本語ができるから。英語しかできないと三井三菱とか住友とかね、そういう大手商社とかそういう相手しかないわけですよ。だけども今もやはり言葉の勉強においてはですね、今ペルシアとかイランとか、アラビアのその国々の歴史とかいろんな文化についても勉強できるわけでしょ。だその言葉を通じていろんな知識、いろんな新しい経験が得られるわけです。だから非常にいろんな意味で大切ですよ。そしてもちろん友達ができる。友達じゃなくてもその偶然どこかでそのイランの人と会うでしょ。そしてちょっとペルシャ語で話しかけると非常に相手が喜ぶわけですよね。
わかります。私もなんかこう電車で困ってるスペインの方とかがいらっしゃった時になんかちょっとこう話しかけて拙いんですけどなんかグラシアスmuchas graciasみたいに言われた時は嬉しいって思いましたね。そのさっきおっしゃってた Go for it っていうなんかとりあえずこう喋ってみるみたいなの大切です。
そう相手がね、その判断しないんですよ。もしまゆさんがねその完璧なスペイン語でなくてもですね、相手がねそれを判断するわけじゃないですよ。それ書いて感謝するんですよ。どうもありがとう。私のスペイン語で説明してくれたと。
そうですよね。
ちょっと発音がじゃないとその文法が違うんだよとかそんなことはもう全然
気にしないですよね。日本人って結構英語の発音とか気にしすぎちゃう面があるんですけど、アメリカに行ってこう自分の発音悪くてもなんか全然誰もこう言ってこなくって、気にしなくていいんだなって思いましたね。
特に北米、英国でもそうですけど、母国語が英語でない人がものすごい多いんですよ。だからちょっとした訛りがあるっていうのは何にもおかしくないんです。ちょっとした発音がね、それはスペイン人ならスペイン語の発音、日本人なら日本語の発音、それは当たり前ですよ。何の問題もないです。
移民の国だからこそそうやってこう他のアクセントとかに対して理解がありますよね。まず私もよく聞かれるのがこう言語を学ぶ上でまず最初に単語をやるのか文法をやるのかリスニングをやるのかなんか本を読んでみるのかみたいなまず最初にやるべきことは何ですか？
僕の場合はいわゆるリスニングと、読むことですね。新しい言葉が自分の頭の中でですね脳に入り込まないとダメなんですよ。だから文法なんかはね非常に覚えにくいんですよね。だからまずこの言葉について経験を積まないといけません。でそれはやはり読むことと聞くこと、それによってその語彙を増やすことで最終的には何か構造的な質問があれば調べてもいいんですけれども、文法から始まるんじゃなくて、聞くこと、読むこと、 語彙を増やすこと、理解度ですね、それは一番大切ですよ。
なんかこう結構エクスポーズして自分をその環境に学ぶっていうスタイルってことですよね。文法とか単語帳とかから入っちゃうと結構つまんないイメージがあるので、そうやって楽しい方向とかに持っていったりとか。
そうです、つまらないし効果的じゃないです。頭脳っていうのはね、集中的にこういうリストですね、語彙表ですね、
単語帳
一生懸命勉強しようと思ってもですね、1回読んでも2回も読んでも3回読んでもね、これ無理ですよ。それよりも新しい単語をあっちで聞いたりそちらで聞いたり少しずつ残るんですよ、脳の中に。ただ一生懸命わざとこれを勉強しようと、それはね、英語でいうブロックラーニングですね、非常に効果的じゃないんです。立証されてますよ、これは効果的じゃないんです。
いやでもそれやってる人多いかもしれないですね、日本だと。学校でやらされることが多分その教科書を読むとか、その文法についての知識を読むっていうのがあるので、言語の勉強でこう煮詰まった時があるかどうかと、その時にどうやって対処するかっていうのを最後に聞かせていただけますでしょうか。
そうですね、言葉を勉強する時にですね、最初の間はね難しいけれどもある程度こう満足感があるんですよね、何も分からなかったところから今少し分かるでしょ。だから非常に楽しいわけですけれども、その後はですね、非常に長い間はね、もう進歩してないような感じで、その進歩のない長い間ですね、それは一番フラストレーションが起こりやすい時ですね。だけどもそれでもやはり続かないといけない。そして聞いてる内容もできるだけ楽しいもの。別にその英語を勉強してる感じじゃないけど、このネットフリックスの映画だとか何か面白い内容では歌でもいいし何でもいいですから、それを楽しむ。進歩してるかしてないかを忘れて言葉を楽しむ、それをやればですね、少しずつというのは進歩は遅いんですよ。頭脳を覚えるためにできてるこのパターンを作る機械なんですよ、頭脳が、ただ時間かかる、ゆっくりですよ、早いことはないんですよ。だから続かないといけない。それにはやはり楽しいもの、楽しく続かないといけない。
私もスペイン語こう本当に上手くなってんのかなとか思ったりするんですけど、なんかこう書を見て、ちょっと分かる単語増えてるかもとか、なんかこう友達と話すとかいう機会があるとすごいこうモチベーションがまた頑張ろうみたいになれますよ。
そうです。
でそういうのをこう定期的に入れたりとか、こう常に学習の中にこう入り込ませるようにしておくってことですよね。
そうですね。
はい、ありがとうございます。はい、ということで、
ありがとう。
はい、ありがとうございます。いろいろお伺いさせて、はい、ありがとうございました。はい、いかがでしたでしょうか。もうね、私自身もすごく参考になる情報ばっかりだし、スペイン語はだらだらと学んでるわけですけど、なんかもうちょっと頑張って労力を費やして、なんかもうむっちゃリスニングしてむっちゃスピーキングしたいなって思いました。で、スペイン語はとりあえず喋れるようになりたいなって思ってるんですけど、その後もなんか違う言語も本当に学びたいなって思いましたね。皆さんは何を学びますか？とりあえず英語だと思うんですけど、なんか本当にみんな喋れると思うので、とりあえず喋っちゃってください。なんか無責任なんですけど、でも喋らないと始まらないので、なんか本当に今はね、友達も、オンラインでね作ったりもできるので、とりあえず話す機会を見つけるしかないと思います。ということで本当にためになる話を聞けました。スティーブさんの方でも動画を撮ったので、こちらでも日本語と英語どっちでも話してるので、ぜひチェックしてみてください。そして彼が運営しているリンクも貼ってますので、興味のある方はそちらも見てみてください。ということで、高評価、コメント、チャンネル登録も忘れずにお願いします。最後まで見ていただいてありがとうございました。Thank you so much for watching. Bye!